Ephesians chapter 1. We're going to look into verse 18. In the last video, we are talking about knowing God in verse 17. And now continuing on with Paul's prayer, it says, the eyes of your understanding being enlightened, that you may know what is the hope of his calling, what are the riches of the glory of his inheritance in the saints. So again, on the last video, we were talking about knowing God. And when we come to know God, we have fellowship with him. We walk in the light as he is in the light. And we have this fellowship for eternity. This is the hope of our calling, to be present with the Lord forever. And that's what he's saying. The hope of his calling, we're going to heaven. And, if you think about going on the ideal vacation, someplace that you love to go and you're looking forward to it. But a couple of things happen along the way. You have a flat tire, or the engine light comes on, or whatever it is, right? But whenever these things are taken care of and you're back on the road heading there that way, it's like, hey, these things happen and they're frustrating, but I'm heading towards this place, this vacation spot. And you think about that, you think about eternally. It's like, I'm getting these bumps and bruises, and I'm having these trials, these mishaps. But you know what? We're going to heaven, and we're going to be with the Lord forever. And hey, what's a couple of bad years compared to eternity in the fullness of the Lord? And that's the hope of his calling. The hope of his calling, which is the hope of heaven, our inheritance. And the second half of this this verse, it begins to say, what are the riches of the glory of his inheritance in the saints? Now it's talking about his inheritance. And do you know what that inheritance is? It's you. He's in Matthew 13 verse 44. Jesus says, again, the kingdom of heaven is like treasure hidden in a field, which a man found and hid, and for joy over it, he goes and sells all that he has and buys that field. And I used to think when I read that parable that was talking about me. I went and sold everything I had, and I went and bought that treasure. But the thing is, salvation can't be bought. And it wasn't me that gave up everything. It was Jesus. In Philippians chapter 2, verse 5, it says, let this mind be in you, which was also in Christ Jesus, who, being in the form of God, did not consider it robbery to be equal with God, but made himself of no reputation, taking the form of a bondservant, coming in the likeness of men, and being found in appearance as a man, he humbled himself and became obedient to the point of death, even the death of the cross. So he's the one that left for a time the glory of heaven and came down as a bondservant. He's the one that sold everything that he had and bought that field, which was us. And again, in the next two verses in Matthew 13, again, the kingdom of heaven is like a merchant seeking a beautiful pearls, who, when he had found one pearl of great price, went and sold all that he had and bought it. And you think about that. All that Jesus went through was to get you. And what is the primary reason that Jesus died for us? What was lost? In the garden, what was lost was fellowship with God. God told Adam, the day you eat of this fruit, you will surely die. And spiritually, he died. And we were cut off from God, because God is spirit, and those who worship God must worship him in spirit and in truth. So we were cut off from God spiritually. And he came and bought us back. He came and left everything that he had to buy us. For the joy that was set before us, he endured the cross. What was that joy? The joy was winning you over. You are his inheritance for all eternity.